Hi, so I want to talk to you about some more of the DBT skills and again looking at some of our distress tolerance skills. Now remember, these skills are about getting through a situation that may be distressing, that may be unpleasant, without making that situation worse for yourself, without doing something that either has negative consequences for you or other people, or that just sparks off even more unpleasant emotions for you. So the skills I want to look at today, there's three of them that are really linked. And so that is radical acceptance, turning the mind, and willingness versus willfulness. And these all come about because as human beings going through life, we are going to encounter pain. We are going to encounter situations that are distressing for us, that are unpleasant for us. And what we need to do is find a way that we can get through these situations without turning that pain into suffering. And pain and suffering are different. Pain is what comes from unpleasant situations. But what happens some of the time with our human brain is we ruminate on things, we worry about things, we try and fight against that pain. We try and wish that it wasn't happening, that a situation wasn't happening, that a situation wasn't taking part in our life at that point in time. And it's all of that and the thinking that goes on with it and the emotions that then come up then, such as the anger or the guilt or the anxiety, that actually transforms that pain into suffering. And suffering is much bigger than pain and creates much more difficulties for us. But one of the ways that we can learn to tolerate pain without adding on the suffering is by radically accepting a situation. And so radical acceptance within the DBT framework is about accepting the situation as it is in that moment. Now that might be a situation, it might be something that's happened, it might be something that somebody's done, it might be something that you've done, or it might be your emotions in that moment. But radical acceptance is being open to accept that this is what is happening in this moment and we can't change it. And once we can accept something, it allows us to connect with the pain, but without adding on all the suffering. And pain can be manageable. Suffering is much more difficult to manage. Now, radical acceptance sometimes people can really struggle with. It's quite a difficult one to do because, quite frankly, we don't want to accept things that are painful, that are difficult for us. And so it can be quite a challenge to get our head round this sense of actually accepting something that's difficult for us. But once we accept something, we can then learn to respond to it. We can then learn how to problem solve. We can then learn how to move forward. When we don't accept something, when we fight against something, when we stamp our feet and say, I don't want this, I don't want to feel like this, I don't want this thing to happen in my life. But when we don't have any control over it, that's when we get stuck. That's when we can't move forward with things and we get ourselves stuck in a circle going round and round and round. And all that happens to our pain is it gets bigger and bigger and then turns into suffering. And a key point of radical acceptance is about accepting something so we can move forward. It is not about saying what has happened to us or what somebody has done is okay. It's not about being weak and being walked all over and saying it was great that this happened in my life. It was great that I lost my job or somebody crashed their car into my car and has created damage. It's about being strong for ourselves to be able to say, this is what happened. I accept what has happened. I don't agree with it, but my acceptance allows me to move forward. And radical acceptance is about being completely open to that and completely open without judgment. It's one to practice. And it is one of the skills that I have taught so many people who fight against radical acceptance and they don't want to do it and they find it very, very difficult. But it is one of the skills that once people really practice it and enable it to be allowed in their life, it makes so much difference for them in being able to move forward. I also mentioned at the beginning a skill called turning the mind, and that is linked to radical acceptance. And turning the mind is really As it says on the tin, it is turning your mind to radically accept something. It's making a choice. It's taking control back over a situation that maybe feels overwhelming and turning to choose to accept that situation in the moment so you can then move forwards. The third skill that I spoke about was willingness versus willfulness. And this is a skill, but you could also look at it as a different mindset as well. So if we think about willfulness, willfulness is that stubbornness, the stomping your feet, saying that you don't want things to be a certain way, willing that things were different when actually they're not. I think of it a bit like when children have tantrums, and they have tantrums because they want their parents to change their mind. That's the willful behaviour. It's not doing what is needed in that situation. The opposite of that is willingness. And we need to bring about a sense of willingness so we are able to turn our mind to be able to radically accept something. And willingness is about doing what works. It's about being effective in a situation. It's about playing by the rules if you need to. It's about doing the things that allows you to move forwards. And so if we think about those, the willfulness is really synonymous with cutting your nose off to spite your face. So not doing the things that need to be done. And willingness is about taking that first step towards making things different in some way. An example I have is if you think about you're on a tennis court and you have one of those machines opposite you that is going to shoot the balls at you. Now, these balls are going to come whether you like it or whether you don't. The button's been pushed and they are going to come at a steady stream towards you. And you can be willful if you want to, and you can stand there and you can stomp your feet and yell and scream and shout and say, I don't want it, I don't want the balls to come in, I don't want to hit the balls back, I don't want to get hurt. But it's not going to change anything. Or you can be willing. And that willingness to do what is needed in that situation then gives you different options. Either you can be willing to move out the way of the balls. You can be willing to go round the other side of the court and turn the machine off. Or you can be willing to pick up a racket and hit the balls back. But none of those options are available to you if you are being willful, if you are unwilling to accept in that moment what is happening. So these three skills, hopefully you can see, all combine to help you be able to tolerate a situation by being more accepting of it, by not fighting against it, by turning the mind and being willing to accept the situation as it is, with everything that it comes with that, be that emotions, whether they are difficult and unpleasant. And once we accept something and just allow the pain to be there without the suffering, it allows us then to move forwards with things.